Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going back in time, to explore life in East Germany, specifically through Angela Merkel's childhood and teenage years,
Right.
as described in the first chapter of her biography.
Yeah. We'll be looking at a really unique world, the GDR, going beyond just like a historical overview
Right.
and trying to understand its complexities through her own experiences.
Yeah, this isn't just like a dry history lesson.
Right.
We're talking about like the future chancellor of Germany. So
Exactly.
understanding her formative years is especially relevant.
Yeah. And how did these early experiences in a system so different from ours
Right.
shape her worldview and maybe even her leadership style later on?
Yeah. It's amazing to think about like pastor's daughter to Germany's first female chancellor.
It is.
What a journey.
Wow.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
Her story starts in 1954.
Okay.
Not in East Germany,
Ah.
but in Hamburg, West Germany.
Yes. A crucial detail.
Okay.
Her family moved to East Germany when she was just 6 weeks old. Her father, Horst Kasner, was a pastor.
Right.
And that decision to move to the GDR, a socialist state officially promoting atheism,
Right.
had a huge impact on their lives.
That's quite a statement.
Yeah.
Moving to a place where your profession is like at odds with the state ideology.
Yeah.
What motivated that decision?
Her father, sometimes nicknamed Red Kasner, held left-leaning views,
Okay.
even within the church.
Uh-huh.
He advocated against things like church tax in West Germany.
Okay.
And believed pastors should be actively involved in their communities, not just in the pulpit.
So Red Kasner wasn't like a derogatory term.
No.
More a reflection of his political leanings.
Exactly. He felt a need for people like him in the East.
Right.
And believed in engaging with the socialist system rather than opposing it from the outside.
Okay.
And this conviction played out in fascinating ways in their everyday lives.
So let's talk about their everyday lives.
Okay.
Their home was anything but typical.
Yeah.
The family ended up on the Waldhof estate in Templin, a complex that included an institution for people with learning disabilities,
Right.
a pastoral college run by her father,
Yeah.
and their own apartment.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up in such a unique environment?
Imagine their home intertwined with this institution.
Yeah.
Residents working in workshops, helping with chores,
Wow.
even sharing meals with the family.
So it wasn't just a theoretical approach to social inclusion.
No.
It was woven into the fabric of their daily lives.
Right.
The biography mentions some really heartwarming anecdotes about this time.
Oh, yeah.
Like Merkel's friendship with Herr Lachmann, the gardener, who shared his knowledge of plants with her.
Yeah.
And there was also a resident who helped her mother with the constant chore of fetching coal for the tiled stoves.
Yeah.
It paints such a vivid picture of life on the estate.
It challenges our preconceived notions of life in a socialist state.
Right.
Her childhood, at least in those early years, wasn't entirely defined by political ideology.
Right.
It was filled with simple joys, a connection to nature, and meaningful interactions with people from really diverse backgrounds.
But of course, the political reality of the GDR was always present.
Always.
It's easy to romanticize a simpler time, but we can't forget the limitations on freedom of expression
Right.
and the ever-present surveillance by the state.
You're right. Even seemingly innocent things,
Yeah.
like receiving care packages from relatives in West Germany,
Right.
could carry a sense of unease.
Really?
These packages, filled with Western goods like good soap and aromatic coffee,
Oh, wow.
offered a glimpse into a different world,
Yeah.
a stark contrast to the everyday realities of the GDR.
It's almost like these packages carried a symbolic weight,
Yeah.
representing not just material differences,
Right.
but also the ideological divide between East and West.
And those divisions became even more tangible with the construction of a Berlin Wall in 1961.
Yeah.
The wall didn't just separate countries,
Right.
it separated families.
Yeah.
Merkel herself had relatives in Hamburg, including her maternal grandmother.
The biography mentions the shock and despair
Yeah.
that swept through her family and community when the wall went up.
Uh-huh.
It's hard to imagine the emotional toll of being suddenly cut off from loved ones like that.
Absolutely. This event would have a lasting impact on Merkel and many others who lived through that period.
Right.
It marked the end of an era in a very real sense, severing those personal connections
Right.
and creating a sense of isolation that would define life in East Germany for decades to come.
That sense of isolation must have been amplified by the restrictions on travel to the West.
Yeah.
The biography talks about how visits to her grandmother in Hamburg became increasingly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like for her to experience those two worlds?
These trips offered a glimpse into a different way of life,
Right.
one that contrasted sharply with her experiences in the GDR.
Yeah.
While her cousins in West Germany enjoyed greater freedoms and access to Western culture, Merkel had to navigate the complexities of life under a socialist regime. She would have been constantly aware of the differences, the things she couldn't say or do, the ever-present sense of being watched.
And as she entered school, those complexities became even more apparent.
Right.
Not only was she growing up in a society where everything was controlled by the state, but she was also the daughter of a pastor.
Right.
A profession that was viewed with suspicion in an officially atheist society.
Imagine the pressure of navigating those two distinct worlds.
Yeah.
The world of her family, where faith and open discussion were encouraged, and the world of school, where certain topics were off limits and conformity was expected.
It's amazing how her childhood experiences echo those broader tensions between individual freedom and state control that defined the GDR. She had to learn from a young age how to adapt and make choices that allowed her to thrive within the system without compromising her integrity.
This is where a seemingly simple event, like joining the Pioneers, the state youth organization, becomes a fascinating insight into her character. Her parents encouraged her to make her own choice after her first year of school.
Wow.
A subtle act of resistance in itself.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about joining a youth group.
No.
It was about making a conscious decision in a society where individual choice was often limited.
Precisely. And her decision to join, even becoming a class leader, speaks to her pragmatism. She recognized the realities of the system and found ways to work within it. Even when her family background created obstacles. Remember, she couldn't be group council chair because of her father's profession.
So she's demonstrating a strategic awareness. Understanding the rules of the game and finding ways to succeed without sacrificing her principles.
Exactly.
It's like she's already developing those political instincts that would later serve her so well.
And it's fascinating to see how these seemingly mundane childhood experiences foreshadow the complex political landscape she would navigate later in life. But before we delve into those later years, there's a particularly revealing incident from her school days that I think we should discuss.
Oh, you mean the old goatee incident?
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
Okay.
I'm dying to know how a seemingly innocent poem could cause such a stir in a school setting.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, as part of their school's cultural program, Merkel's class chose to recite a poem by Christian Morgenstern called The Pug on the Wall. It seems like an innocuous choice. But the poem itself, with its themes of passive observation, could be seen as a subtle critique of conformity. Especially in the context of East German society.
So they weren't just reciting a poem.
No.
They were making a statement.
Right.
I can see how that might have raised some eyebrows. But the poem wasn't the only thing that got them into trouble, was it?
No, it wasn't. Instead of the usual appeals for donations to causes like rebuilding Vietnam, which were common in East German schools at the time, they decided to call for support for Frelimo, Mozambique's liberation movement.
Wow, that's a pretty bold move for a group of teenagers in East Germany.
It was.
They were directly challenging the state-sanctioned narrative.
Exactly. And to top it off, they decided to sing the International, the socialist anthem, in English.
Oh, wow.
It was a subtle act of rebellion, a way of injecting their own perspective into a highly controlled event.
I can only imagine the reaction from the school administration. This wasn't just a minor infraction.
No.
It was a direct challenge to their authority.
You're absolutely right. The administration didn't take it lightly. There were investigations, accusations of complacency and Western influence. Even pressure on parents to denounce their children.
It was a stark reminder of the limits of permissible dissent in the GDR.
It was.
The biography mentions that Merkel's mother was particularly worried about the repercussions for the family. They'd always tried to avoid open conflict with the state.
It's understandable that she would be concerned. The Stasi, the East German secret police, had a reputation for ruthlessness. And even a seemingly minor incident like this could have serious consequences.
It's chilling to think about how this incident, something that might seem trivial to us today, could have upended their lives.
It speaks volumes about the atmosphere of fear and suspicion that permeated East German society. But amidst those fears, there were also acts of courage and resilience. In this case, Merkel's father used his connections within the church to downplay the incident and shield his daughter from the worst of the fallout.
So he was able to navigate the system, using his influence to protect his family.
It was a testament to his resourcefulness and his commitment to his daughter's well-being.
It also highlights the complex role of the church in East German society. While officially discouraged, the church provided a space for dissent and offered a degree of protection for those who dared to challenge the status quo. It's fascinating how these seemingly disparate threads, family, faith, politics, all intertwine to shape Merkel's early life.
They do.
And those experiences would continue to shape her as she moved on to university in Leipzig in 1973. This was a pivotal moment in her life. A time of intellectual growth, but also a time when she would confront the realities of the Stasi's pervasive presence.
Exactly.
Leipzig was known for its intellectual and cultural vibrancy, but it was also a city under constant surveillance. How did that environment affect her?
Well, remember, the Stasi infiltrated every aspect of East German society, including universities. Students were constantly monitored, and any sign of dissent could have serious consequences.
The biography recounts a chilling story about some of Merkel's fellow students who were expelled. After speaking too freely about the events in Czechoslovakia. During like a drunken gathering after a day of potato picking. It's a sobering reminder of the risks involved in expressing even mild criticism of the state.
It is.
People lived with the constant fear of being overheard, reported, and punished for their words or actions.
It must have been incredibly difficult to navigate that kind of environment.
Yeah.
Especially for someone like Merkel, who was already aware of the limits of permissible dissent.
Did she have any personal encounters with the Stasi during her time in Leipzig?
She did. In fact, the Stasi attempted to recruit her.
Oh, wow.
After her father was caught speeding.
Okay.
They used this minor infraction as leverage. Hoping to exploit her family ties for their own purposes.
That's a common tactic. Using personal vulnerabilities to pressure people into becoming informants. It's a chilling reminder of how far the Stasi was willing to go to maintain control.
But Merkel's father had prepared his children for such a scenario.
Wow.
He had taught them to deflect any Stasi overtures by saying they wouldn't be able to keep it a secret. It was a brilliant tactic, playing on the Stasi's obsession with secrecy to deter their advances.
So he essentially gave her the tools to resist their pressure. It's a testament to his foresight and his understanding of how the system operated.
Absolutely. And it seems that Merkel internalized those lessons. She was able to navigate those treacherous waters without compromising her integrity. But her experiences with the Stasi weren't the only defining aspect of her university years. She was also deeply engaged in her studies, particularly in physics, a field she saw as a refuge from ideological manipulation.
I remember you mentioned that earlier. She had wanted to study psychology, but wasn't deemed suitable by the school. Why was that?
Her family background has always played a role. The state had a say in who studied what, and certain fields were considered off limits to those deemed ideologically unreliable.
So she couldn't study psychology because her dad was a pastor.
And because of some of the things that had happened before.
Wow.
But Merkel, ever the pragmatist, saw physics as a field where truth couldn't be manipulated by ideology. 2 + 2 always equals 4. Regardless of the political system.
It was a space where she could excel without having to constantly censor herself.
Exactly.
It makes sense given her analytical mind and her desire to understand the world through a lens of logic and reason.
And this analytical approach, combined with her experiences with the Stasi and the ever-present constraints of life in the GDR, would have a profound impact on her worldview.
It sounds like her university years were a period of intense intellectual growth, but also a time when she was forced to confront some difficult realities about the nature of power and control.
Absolutely. But amidst those challenges, there were also moments of personal exploration and discovery. The biography mentions her love for Leipzig's cultural offerings. The Gewandhaus Concert Hall, the St. Thomas Church with its famous choir, even the historic Auerbach's Keller restaurant, immortalized in Goethe's Faust.
It's interesting how she sought out those cultural experiences.
Yeah.
Even within the confines of a system that sought to control every aspect of life.
It speaks to her resilience.
Right.
Her determination to find meaning and beauty in the world around her, even in the face of political oppression.
And it's those qualities,
yeah.
resilience, determination, a commitment to truth and reason that would ultimately shape her path.
Yeah.
Not just as a scientist, but as a leader who would navigate the complexities of a reunified Germany and a rapidly changing world.
Before we delve into those later years, there's one more aspect of her time in Leipzig that I think is worth exploring. Her encounters with Russian language and culture would have a profound impact on her understanding of the broader political landscape.
Okay.
And I think it's crucial to understand how those experiences fit into her life, shaped her worldview. So we've established that Merkel was immersed in this academic and cultural world of Leipzig, but also grappling with the realities of life in East Germany.
Yeah, where does her experience with Russian language and culture fit into all of this?
It might seem like a departure from physics and the Stasi.
Yeah.
But her exposure to Russian culture actually played a big role in shaping her understanding of the world, beyond just the GDR. She excelled in Russian at school, even winning trips to the Soviet Union.
Wow.
But it wasn't just about academic achievement for her.
What do you mean?
These trips provided her with like firsthand exposure to a different system, a different way of life.
Yeah. She encountered young Russians who questioned the division of Germany.
Wow.
Who listened to Western music.
Okay.
Who held views that would have been considered subversive in the GDR.
So even within the communist bloc, there were cracks in the facade.
There were.
It wasn't a monolithic entity.
No.
But a collection of individuals with their own doubts and aspirations.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And for Merkel, who had grown up in a society where conformity was the norm. These encounters must have been eye-opening.
Yeah.
They exposed her to the complexities of the world beyond the Iron Curtain. And planted the seeds of critical thinking that would serve her well later on.
It's like those trips gave her a glimpse of the world.
Yeah.
Beyond the ideological constraints of the GDR. A world where different perspectives were not only tolerated but embraced.
Exactly.
Did she ever express any personal reflections on these experiences?
The biography mentions a seemingly small detail.
Okay.
She bought a Beatles record in Moscow.
It might seem like a trivial thing, but in the context of the GDR, it was a subtle act of rebellion.
Yeah.
A symbol of her openness to Western culture.
It's a powerful symbol.
Yeah.
It shows that she wasn't simply absorbing the propaganda of the East. She was actively seeking out alternative perspectives.
Exactly. Yeah. And this willingness to engage with different viewpoints, even those that challenge the prevailing ideology, would become a hallmark of her leadership style later on.
So we're seeing how these seemingly disparate experiences, navigating the pressures of being a pastor's daughter, excelling in physics, encountering dissent in Leipzig, and exploring Russian culture, all contributed to the development of her worldview.
They did.
It wasn't just a linear progression. But a complex interplay of influences that shaped her into the leader she would become.
And it's in these formative years, amidst the constraints and contradictions of the GDR, that we see the emergence of those qualities that would define her leadership. Pragmatism, resilience, a commitment to truth and reason, and an ability to navigate complex situations with a steady hand.
It's really remarkable when you think about it.
Yeah.
She wasn't a fiery revolutionary seeking to overthrow the system. She was a young woman who found ways to excel within a system that often sought to limit her opportunities while quietly cultivating the skills and perspectives that would ultimately enable her to lead a reunified Germany.
And as we reach the end of this deep dive into her early life, I'm left with a sense of awe at how these seemingly ordinary experiences laid the foundation for such an extraordinary journey.
It makes you wonder how those early lessons learned amidst the complexities of the GDR shaped her approach to leadership on the world stage. Did they foster a sense of empathy for those who had lived through similar struggles? Did they instill in her a deep appreciation for the fragility of freedom,
right,
and the importance of democratic values?
Those are great questions to ponder.
Yeah.
It's clear that Angela Merkel's story is not just a personal biography,
Right.
but a reflection of a pivotal moment in history. Her journey from a small town in East Germany to the Chancellery in Berlin is a testament to the power of individual resilience and the enduring human capacity for growth, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles.
It's a story that resonates far beyond the borders of Germany.
Absolutely.
Reminding us that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can find ways to thrive and ultimately to shape a better future.
That's a great point, shaped her worldview. So we've established that Merkel was immersed in this academic and cultural world of Leipzig.
Right.
But also grappling with the realities of life in East Germany.
Yeah, where does her experience with Russian language and culture fit into all of this?
It might seem like a departure from physics and the Stasi.
Yeah.
But her exposure to Russian culture actually played a big role. In shaping her understanding of the world beyond just the GDR. She excelled in Russian at school, even winning trips to the Soviet Union.
Wow.
But it wasn't just about academic achievement for her.
What do you mean?
These trips provided her with firsthand exposure to a different system, a different way of life.
Yeah.
She encountered young Russians who questioned the division of Germany, who listened to Western music, who held views that would have been considered subversive in the GDR.
So even within the communist bloc, there were cracks in the facade.
There were.
It wasn't a monolithic entity, but a collection of individuals with their own doubts and aspirations.
Precisely. And for Merkel, who had grown up in a society where conformity was the norm, these encounters must have been eye-opening. They exposed her to the complexities of the world beyond the Iron Curtain, and planted the seeds of critical thinking that would serve her well later on.
It's like those trips gave her a glimpse of the world beyond the ideological constraints of the GDR. A world where different perspectives were not only tolerated but embraced.
Exactly.
Did she ever express any personal reflections on these experiences?
The biography mentions a seemingly small detail. She bought a Beatles record in Moscow. It might seem like a trivial thing, but in the context of the GDR, it was a subtle act of rebellion. A symbol of her openness to Western culture.
It's a powerful symbol. It shows that she wasn't simply absorbing the propaganda of the East. She was actively seeking out alternative perspective.
Exactly. And this willingness to engage with different viewpoints, even those that challenged the prevailing ideology, would become a hallmark of her leadership style later on.
So we're seeing how these seemingly disparate experiences, navigating the pressures of being a pastor's daughter, excelling in physics, encountering dissent in Leipzig, and exploring Russian culture, all contributed to the development of her worldview.
They did.
It wasn't just a linear progression, but a complex interplay of influences that shaped her into the leader she would become.
And it's in these formative years, amidst the constraints and contradictions of the GDR, that we see the emergence of those qualities that would define her leadership. Pragmatism, resilience, a commitment to truth and reason, and an ability to navigate complex situations with a steady hand.
It's really remarkable when you think about it. She wasn't a fiery revolutionary seeking to overthrow the system. She was a young woman who found ways to excel within a system that often sought to limit her opportunities while quietly cultivating the skills and perspectives that would ultimately enable her to lead a reunified Germany.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Angela Merkel's early life.
It's fascinating to think about how these experiences growing up in East Germany shaped her into the leader she would become.
Absolutely. It's a story of resilience, adaptability, and a commitment to truth.
And it makes you wonder how these early lessons would inform her decisions later on.
Definitely food for thought, for sure.
I hope you enjoyed this deep dive, and be sure to join us next time as we continue to explore the life and legacy of